Aya, now it's time to sew the heel since you've already sewed the moccasin puckers like this one here on the inside and outside. So you get a piece of sinew and about 24 inches long, put a knot in the end. What you also need on this step is you need to have marked point E from your pattern. And point E on this particular pattern is right here. I don't know if you can see my little pencil mark. Because that is the top of your moccasin, and so that's where we're going to start to sew, and we're going to sew from there down. The rest, everything above that, is going to be your flap, so that'll end up folding over. So again, there's a knot in here already. I'm going to start right where that mark is at. And I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to make sure my knot is in the inside so it doesn't show. And there is, and give a tug to make sure it doesn't pull through. So if you'll notice that I sewed about came in a quarter of an inch from the edge. That's exactly where we want to be. And ultimately what we want is to have these ends butted together. So I'm going to go through this again, lining this up, make sure, because otherwise your flaps will be crooked and your heel, the bottom of the heel won't line up. I'm going to go through both layers this time just to give it a little bit of a secure. This isn't quite as a stressful point as the top of the puckers, but it does create a little bit of stress when you're putting them on and off. So now what I want to do, now what I want to do is hold it flat like this. So what I'm going to do is sew the same stitch we used on the pucker toe, and I'm going to sew it down all the way to the bottom of the heel. And I'm going to start a 1/4 inch from the edge, keep my thread up, 1/4 inch from that cut edge, and then I'm going to skim the leather just like I did the last time and go in. What you'll also notice is that this stitch is also about a 1/4 inch from the last stitch. So that should be easy to remember. And pull it snug. We want this to be a nice snug stitch. I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing a 1/4 inch from the last stitch. So about right there, and a 1/4 inch from the edge. And as you can see, I'm coming out on that edge right there. And give it a nice snug pull. Turn it around and do the same thing, and you're going to repeat it all the way down. A 1/4 inch from the last stitch, which is about right here, and go in through the thickness of the leather. Make sure that that slacking thread is up on the top. So you form a nice pretty baseball stitch on the edge. Another stitch, 1/4 inch from the last one and a 1/4 inch from the edge. And pull it snug. So you can kind of see the idea, other than that very first step or stitch, you can kind of see what it's starting to look like, which is like a baseball stitch. So you'll find that this side is a little bit easier because it's flat and there's no puckers. So that makes it a lot easier. You're going to do the same thing when you get to the end. You're going to sew all the way to the end, put your needle through the seam, turn the moccasin inside out, and then you're going to sew back up the other side. So, and I can show you that here in a minute on one that's already finished. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like when you're done. So here's the finished heel on a moccasin. They started here on the outside. They sewed all the way down around this little curve to the bottom. Then they took their needle, fed it through those two butted edges, turned it inside out, and they did the same exact thing on this side. You won't be able to see it as well, all the way up to where we started, which would be point E.